Okay, we're live now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading some of the things that are required from it. So looking at all of the for a carpenter and for the Cake Financials, what given their customer value proposition, market plan, technology and operation strategy, and cash flow formula, what do you think? You know, as we can reconstruct it, as you looked at it now, what do you feel that could be different, or was it set up in a position to give it success, or do you feel from what you guys have looked at and formulated your own hypothesis, do you think that Cake could have survived?
I think it could have. Um, I mean, it just needed, I think, some good TLC for sure.
So,
Yeah.
so what I was looking at it was it had a lot of potential. However, when I was looking over what Carpenter did a good, what he would have done differently, and from what I understood, he pretty much says this: he had the right team from the beginning, and he did not use venture capitalists from the beginning. Those two things basically doomed him because with the venture capitalists, from what I read, was limiting him because a lot what I'm reading too is that when you have the seed, the bigger companies won't even touch you until you start making money and revenue. Well, he doesn't have anything at this time because he needed more money. Had he started small, he could have been able to tiered his product to be able to generate a little bit of cash flow. I mean, and not been able to, may not have hit the bank that he was hoping for right away, but it would have been a lot more. It would have given him a lot more leverage because he has that ability to show, hey, I do have some revenue. It's not big, but it's on a process. I could, and looking at, they can look at, future cash flows and stuff like that. He could have been able to generate the money that and made a promise to the larger venture capitalists, which could have happened. But I feel like what he did from the beginning doomed him.
Yeah. That's a good point, Joseph. I think it was. I think the reason, though, that he even got in that position from the start was that he started out making a product that he felt that would be successful according to his needs and his wants and his interests. Mm-hmm. So I think that if he, like, later on, he started to find out, oh, hey, these users, these investors don't really want to communicate with their friends and family over this platform. Mm-hmm. So he found some things that they put so much time and energy and money into to find out later that, oh, you shouldn't have done that because that's not what we wanted anyways. And then those resources, that money that he had initially that he kind of, in a sense, wasted, right? He could have brought that up in a different way. So I agree with you. If he had more money later on, I think it could be successful still. But I think he kind of hurt himself at the get-go just because he didn't. He did a couple of test groups, I think, right? Mm-hmm. He got a couple people. He got a few test groups together, but it sounded like it was kind of quick, and he just got a general idea of would you use it. They said they would, so he just built what he thought they would like instead of getting this prototype and saying, "Hey, would this be helpful? Would you use this?" and kind of using it that way. I just feel like he kind of shot himself in the foot by doing that.
Yeah, and to add to that, it was in September 2008. He says found out that the male who are predominant in the investing are not social like what he found in the social media that he was trying to collect a lot of his information. That was the female, and so he went for the wrong demographics for his to understand his value proposition, because right. he was looking at the hype of, with the whole new social media, he thought it was going to be the real thing, and you realize that was not the course for this particular industry.
Right, I agree. Welcome, Austin.
What's up, Austin? How are you?
Good, thanks. We're just talking about Cake, and if we feel like I don't know how their model was, and if we feel like they had a chance to be successful with their platform and with their company that they had.
Gotcha. Sorry guys, I was planning for 6. I just barely got off work, so traffic was bad. Anyway, so what's already been discussed?
So we're what we're on right now is Carpenter and understanding if Cake was doomed or not, and I have put my argument that it was doomed from the get-go because I don't think he did the proper research and he went too fast into a venture capitalist. And with that, the leverage was spent on the seed instead of going for a higher tier funding, which we found, if you read in the Anderson and Horowitz case study, that explains a little bit more about that. But my proposition is that he could have made it successful had he not had he done the right research up front and not used venture capitalists.
Sure.
Yeah, it's dumb, isn't it? Yeah. People are just so demanding. And
That was weird. Sorry, somebody's video was like messed up.
Mine is
So I agree with that. I think that there's definitely research that needed to be done. It was really interesting though, looking at the culture of the company and how he selected his people. I thought that was something good that he did. But I agree, like part of the business model, if he would have been able to fulfill like all the categories and was able to do, I don't know, fail fast in the areas that he knew was going to or that he saw was failing, and then just kind of revamp them, do his research, do his surveys, whatever he needs to do in order to find out where he needs to invest or what he needs to do in order to grow his company. And like I said, fail fast and then change it. It would have been a lot better. But one thing I do think that was awesome was the culture that he established and the kind of people he had doing certain jobs. He didn't just expand drastically and just get whoever and just try to blow money on people and not care about where he put them. I don't know. I think coming to the end of college, I've seen a lot of that. Is maybe I noticed it more because of the position I'm in, but I just think it's huge nowadays is the kind of culture that you're working in. If you treat I can't remember what book it was. Oh, it was actually a book about how hospitals are ran, but the book's called Patients Come Second, which is a really interesting idea because you'd think that the patients in a hospital come first, but basically the guy runs a ton of hospitals and it's because of his employees come first. And then because he treats his employees well, he believes that the employees in turn will treat the patients well. And so that's what the book's about. But I don't know. It's been really interesting working for a lot of companies. Right now, I work for Idaho Central Credit Union. They've been the #1 credit union in Idaho, the best place to work for the last 7 years. And they just got top performing credit union in the nation. And the only thing they push is culture. You know what I mean? The people that they hire. They claim that they only hire like people, but I think like I said, I think I'm just noticing it just because it's relevant in my life right now. But I think I kind of admired the way he went about putting the people where they best fit and where they wanted to be.
Well, he did mention that, Austin, he did mention that in his closing as he was thinking about what he could have done differently. He did say he wished earlier he had the same team he had when he left, been there from the start. And his only regret he did make was he didn't have the right people from the get-go.
Right.
And he didn't have a great team when he finished, just not from the get-go. And he thinks by that would have helped them push his product probably even further.
I had mentioned earlier, about the TLC. I think it was Joseph that said it earlier about how, with the studies and everything, what's the social media, it's more for the women. I think with the TLC, I think they really just kind of missed their target market. They were. I think the business itself was directed more towards men in their 40s and 50s, like it said, but their business model was kind of more presented towards women. Does that make sense? So I think if they were to just kind of pivot their market and, find some way to make their product more attractive to women, I think it could have done really well with, like I said, with the proper TLC.
I completely agree with that. And I'm sure you guys have already discussed this. Once again, I apologize for being late, but if you do the numbers of like the amount of money that was spent on like studying the stock market or like investments and advising, it's like a huge market, you know what I mean? And so I completely agree with that. If they were able to like use those key indicators like you were talking about and like hone in on their actual market or like their niche, like women, they had huge potential,
Yeah, I think they just missed it. And I also think we lost Joseph for a little bit.
No, I'm back.
You're good?
No, I'm good. Sorry, something happened.
I just saw like your little picture down here froze, and I was like, "Uh-oh, I think we lost."
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, you're good. Did you still catch all that though?
No, I did not.
Okay. So I just kind of talked about like with the TLC that I mentioned earlier. I think they really just missed their target market.
Mm-hmm.
Their target market was, the 40 and 50-year-old males, but their business model was more directed towards women. So if they could have figured out a way to transition their product to be more attractive to women, then I think definitely with the right TLC, they could have seen a lot of success with that.
Okay, so how would you, I'm going to play devil's advocate, what would you recommend in that situation to do? Because, as it is stated already that the people who invest are predominantly male. How would you be able to attract the female who are already in the social media?
I mean, that's tough. I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about having the right team from the get-go.
Okay.
I think it's really important you got to bring the businesswoman on, because the thing is they think different than men do. And I mean, it's just the fact of the matter, women think different than men. But if you were to get, the right, essentially the right person to kind of test it on, like, okay, here's our model. What do you think of this? Kind of throw it at them. Somebody that fits the criteria that you want, kind of as a test subject, I guess I would say. I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't know the answer myself. These case studies are just a glimpse into the market. And I had to read this like 2-3 times just to understand what they were talking about. So I have no idea what this is talking about. So I'm in nursery, not in tech, for a reason.
That's awesome. I don't know, I kind of want to add to that. I think it's interesting, that question, just how you would pull women from like the social media side over into investment. I think a lot of people, or a lot of women, were inquiring, especially around that time, is just because they truly wanted to know. They weren't afraid to like search it the way they were searching it, you know what I mean? Trying to find information. So if you could have made a platform, and they talked about their website being like really heavy, but if you could have made a platform or like an app, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Robinhood, the investment app. Okay. Or something like that, where you just make it really easy for them to try it. You know what I mean? Just kind of get their feet wet. I think that would be, I'm going to use this term, cash money. You know what I mean? I think it would be awesome, because it would show them, like, even if they only want to do a little bit, it would teach them the principles of it, and it literally just guides you through. And then once you've done it once or twice, I feel like you wouldn't be afraid to start dumping thousands, you know what I mean? Or invest in a way that you feel comfortable because of the knowledge that you've been given, because you're had the opportunity to get your feet wet based on like a light, simple platform like that. So I don't know. That could be, like I said, like you said, actually, Joseph, we don't have the answer, but that could work,
Well, I think that's a great idea, Austin.
Yeah. Well, I wonder I'm trying to say, it talks about Big Splash. I'm not trying to, and that was, I think that was the interface that they were talking about, and it was being successful, but they just didn't have the money to keep it going. And so that was, had they had introduced that earlier, I believe they would have been able to get themselves to probably do a lot what both you were indicating, getting the women, because it talks right here about mint.com, and the women actually are the ones using that, not the men. It's very user friendly. The interface is, I mean, again, I'm using terms I might be abusing. The interface is a lot easier to work with. And so that's where I think what he was talking about was his failure, was he did not recognize, he was trying to go for one demographics, and yet he was pulling from this demographics, but in reality, he was trying to go for, I think, more for the women, right? He was attracting the male. And by the time he was finishing, he was starting to attract the women, whom is what almost sounded like is what he was trying to do. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you guys have ever used Mint. I've used Mint, and it's not bad. Like, I like it, but that brings up a good point. Kind of on a side note, I have a good friend that he's a welding engineer for John Deere, and he's successful. He does all right. But his wife is the one that while she's at home with the kids, she'll do research like this. She'll find out what they should do, how they should allocate their funds. You know what I mean? While he's doing his thing, you know, at work, doing his 9 to 5, you know, she has some time to do this. And I don't know, I can see what his problem was, you know what I mean? Because even though maybe the women are the ones researching it, maybe it's the same case all around, maybe it's a little different. They're still probably influencing the males. You know what I mean? Like my friend is. So she probably was like, hey, when my buddy gets home, she's like, this is what I think, like this is what I found. She could have said like, I found this investment website, I think we should do it. You know what I mean? And so in theory, I feel like, yeah, it might be a niche to women, but they could just be kind of like a door to open up to, you know, their husbands, spouses, friends, whoever, you know what I mean, as well. But yeah, if he knew that women were the ones that were researching or like using it, and he had the data for that, then yeah, I would have like pushed that as much as I could, because you got to run with what you've already been given, you know, kind of explode on it, just capitalize. And then I feel like everyone else would have started using it as well.
So I guess, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I more or less kind of missed this understanding of like him targeting the women. So that was his goal. I must have missed that in the case then.
No. What it came about was the social media. He was attacking. His first attempt was through social media, and through the social media it was known later that it was the people that have the greatest influence through social media was women, not male.
Sure. Yep.
He was by using social media. Therefore, he was trying to attract people who use that, but he didn't realize the people that he was attracting through social media were not the people who were attracted to the actual
form of investing,
right.
Yeah. So I guess my thought is, if men are already the ones that are investing, like what would be why would we want to try to change that to women, right? Like why wouldn't you just give up the social media part of it and just do something that attracts more men to the platform?
Either way, that's, you know, what Tanner was saying was a TLC, you know, putting the care into it. If that had been done right, we would have been able to see the company not been, because he was attacking it through correct this, and help me out, Tanner, if I'm trying to reiterate. If he had done it right and done his due diligence, the marketing that he was attacking was for women, not who are essentially the ones who are doing the investing. Now, it doesn't mean women can't invest. It means that if he had put the due diligence, he would have made a platform that would have attracted women whom he had invested so much of his time in the beginning in his marketing on social media.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. I appreciate clarifying.
So there was a conflict. And so what we're trying to come to a conclusion here is it's like, we're about hitting about the 30-minute mark for this part. So one of the things we have to come to an understanding is, okay, what is the consensus? Okay, I'm just going to read it. After your group has recreated the business model, vote. Was Cake doomed from the beginning, or was this a promising business model? We have argued both sides, because both sides have valid, I think it could have. Okay, but the next bullet point says, beginning with those who say it was promising, then tell the group that you like about it, provide convincing arguments in favor of the business, what evidence from the case you use to support your position. Okay, we did that. Next, allow those who feel Cake was doomed from the outside to try to convince which assumption turned out to be false. I think we've done that too. So at this point, before it goes right here, and the next part is next, discuss Stephen's approach to the opportunity, try to understand if anything Stephen could have helped done differently. All right. And we've all talked about all these different things he said. Is as a group, identify and going into question 4, is as a group, identify the main reason for Cake's failure. Was the failure just beyond Stephen's control? I guess now we have to talk about that. Yes or no?
I say no. I think it was definitely within his control.
You think so? I'm gonna be sort of lenient on him, because he just entered in one of the hardest recessions that this country's ever seen. And it was right. I mean, if you read it right there, it says right there, September 2008. That's when Lehman Brothers went to bankruptcy 2 weeks after he was trying to get the approach to Charles Schwab. And when all that fell through, then those guys were not looking to expand their platforms or anything. They were just trying to keep what they have and do well with it. So I'm going to say that Steve, that was out of his control, and therefore that sort of put a huge damper. I mean, but given the arguments that have been presented, had he done it start from the beginning with a good team, knowing who he was supposed to focus on, he might have been able to avoid this too. So
right, and that's mostly my argument, are those few things right there. If he had started with the right team, if he would have known who his market was and who he was reaching with his current business model, because who his target market was and what his current business model were reaching were two separate markets.
Right.
I think if he definitely had the control of that, if he had just, like you were saying earlier, Joseph, done his due diligence to look into that.
I agree as well. I think he's in the tech side of things, right? He's dealing with a lot of technology, almost like big data, And it was right after that recession where we started to see. That's when the big change from the banking industry started going to big data. And I kind of look at it like, if you look at what the salaries were of all these big banking guys that caused like the housing market crash and stuff, they were making really good money on average. But now everything is the big data companies. We're talking like Oracle, Amazon, Google. All these companies started just exploding at that point. So, I mean, the argument that he's coming out of this recession gets hard. It was hard for everybody. But, I mean, all of these companies just started exploding after that. And they continue to explode, I mean, Amazon, their stock price is through the roof now. You know what I mean? And they all use this kind of technology. And like these investment companies as well do the same when they're dealing with big data. But it's the exact same argument. I believe that if he was able to do his research and make data I think he would have been fine.
And just to add on to both of those, I don't have much to add other than just that I agree. I think a lot of it was in his control as far as the target market, like what Tanner said about the target market and the business model. I mean, they just didn't line up. And anytime that doesn't happen, I think that falls directly on the person that started the business. And so therefore, I think it is kind of his fault for not. I mean, if he would have had that lined up, if he would have really gone at it and done his due diligence and then it failed and then it was unsuccessful, I would say that maybe there's another factor, but there wasn't in this case as far as I see it.
Well, I'm not I'm not easy. I'm not staunch in my decision, so I can definitely see what you guys, given the case that you guys are presenting, I think you guys hit good points that, as anybody who starts a business needs to know if you're going to be successful, you need to have the control. So, so one last question before we go on to the Anderson and Howard's cases. What small steps could he have done instead to start it? And I think we've hit pretty much everything, but just as a recap, it sounded like from everybody, had he just been able to, understood whom his market is, he could have easily set up a whatever platform to which he was. I mean, his business plan had three things that he wanted to do, and that was advertise and get money from advertisement, lead generation, and sponsorship. Second was premium service for consumers and data licensing fees. I have absolutely no idea what that means. So, but that was how he was going to get his revenue. And is there anything that we have not discussed that he could have done to help start generating some, I think, first off, some revenue up front would have really helped his case to keep surviving?
I hate to beat a dead horse, but I think we've covered a lot of it. I'm trying to think of anything extra.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we have to discuss it much further. I think right now, given the fact, I think we're all under the same conclusion that Steven could have done some better things up front to have the control, and he would not have failed. All right. Should we go on to the next case?
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, so was the VC industry attractive for A16Z to enter the 2009? What do you guys think?
I personally don't think so.
Given what it was intended to in the exhibit, it looked like it was not a good one. And also the fact that if you look at all those numbers, the venture capitalist was doing worse than the S&P. What was the competition like at that time?
But isn't that, I mean, that's the one that the competition had 3% of the people had 95% of the money in the industry, right? So like
the top 5 companies or something like that.
Yeah, like I mean, you had your big dogs that took all the money, and for anyone else that tried to enter, man, it was hard. I mean, it was a tough competitive industry.
But do you think so? But if you looked at the numbers, it was nearly down, like what, 20-30% from its high. So there might have been room, because it was interesting. There was more money. If you look at the numbers, less companies, but more money was being shelled out though. So I don't know. Is there opportunity for money to be made in that kind of industry?
I don't know.
That's tough.
That's a good question.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, well, let's just pick is it called A16Z? Is that what it's really called?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not reading it wrong. I didn't know if there was a weird way to say it. Well, if I'm correct though, can someone tell me they're doing well though? They're not the big, but they're making money though, right?
Yeah, I think A16 did really good, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it was a tough industry, but they saw an opportunity and they went for it, and it turned out pretty good for them, in my opinion.
Well, and if I'm correct, when I was reading it, the reason why they were successful is the seed, whatever those different funds that they were contributing to, the one that they were making the money was in the growth fund. The growth funds, such as, I think Tier B or something like that, or I'm not quite all. instead of like the seed or the class A, Schedule A ones, he was doing the Schedule B, Schedule C ones. These are companies that have been there, such as Facebook had already gotten their money. He was talking about Twitter. He was talking about Zulily, all these other companies that now are, if you know anything about the internet, these are big names, and they were investing into those, but they were not seeding them. They were or investing in them as to help keep them going. But I think that's how they were getting their money, because they made what, fourfold on their money with the Skype deal. That's pretty darn good.
Well, and they were investing. I mean, the list of companies that they gave were like they're massing out. Like one of them was LinkedIn and stuff, like all the ones that you named. But they were hitting all these, what's it called, the Silicon Valley startup companies, right? And they were just, what was the term they used? It was like source pick and win or whatever.
It was source pick and win. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. But it was so interesting because I even asked the question, like, what did they do differently from the other venture capitalist companies? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not to hit on culture again, but like they did have an awesome culture as well.
Oh,
yeah.
They had people that not only knew how to do that, but then they did that within the company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like it wasn't just like you had people under you. It's kind of hard to explain, but you have just people under you and they just come in to do their job and they go home at the end of the day. They had people, it's like, okay, we're all trying to grow this company and I'm not going to screw this up because I'm basically like a shareholder in it. I want it to be successful. And so they're going to put their heart and soul into picking good portfolios as well.
Well, another thing that was also probably to their benefit in 2009, that was when, in all reality, if you were in the investing business, that's when you were making your money, because everything was at its lowest in 2009.
All right.
And so they could get things for probably a good deal, and
everything's on sale.
I mean, if you look back, if you know anything about stocks and you look at Ford at the bottom when it hit only like $2, and now it's like, it's not high. I stopped looking at it, but a year later it was $12 just for a stock in Ford, and it was $2. That's sixfold. You put $1,000 in, 1 year later, you put $1, you get $6 back. That's amazing. And I think that's what they were doing. And I think that's why they were able to come in. There's a little bit of luck. I think they had a great team, like you guys were saying. They had great knowledge going behind them, and every one of them that was on the team, they were either a entrepreneur or or CEO of a company, a startup company. So they knew what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what made them really successful too, is they were both CEOs at one point. So they had that experience too, and they were going in it with experience. Can we talk about the sourcing for a minute? What does it mean as far as their sourcing? They were good at sourcing, right? It said that multiple times.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, it sounded like they would have these companies that come in that are trying to get going, right? And they would help these companies pick a good portfolio that's going to help them. And not only would they just pick them, but they would actually they would set them up for success. Whereas the other companies, the other big firms that had these stock, they were just like, you're smaller, whatever, you're insignificant. If we get to you, we get to you. That's kind of how I felt, but maybe I kind of read it wrong too.
I think if I'm correct, sourcing is almost like an agent in the movie industry. That's what they were trying to say. They're going to go after and help them become a star. Right. That's what I felt like it was trying to illustrate. And it's like they said, why, if it can do it for the movie stars and basketball players and getting them, why can't we do that?
Yeah, and they want them to succeed, right? That was their goal. Versus the other VCs, I felt like it didn't matter as much. But like these guys were personable. They knew what it was like to be CEO, and they wanted help to help these companies succeed. And that's the value proposition I feel like they added to.
Right. I think that's freaking huge, Austin, because like I was saying before, like the other firms had these this idea where they're just looking at like the the financials and like the statistic probability of them succeeding. And where they're like, okay, well, you guys are small companies. We'll try to put you with these guys. Like, this is where you fit almost. But then, like you were saying, these guys were like, man, you have huge potential. They got to know the people and were like, I'm going to truly help you grow, which in turn made them explode. You know what I mean? Because every time they were successful, so was their own company, you know? Which it makes sense. Like when we're talking about it, it's like, obviously, why wouldn't you do that? But
Yeah.
if you look at these big firms, it's like they wanted to minimize their risk for themselves. You know what I mean? So you just have these guys that are coming in 9 to 5 or whatever, and are just like, well, I'm not going to lose the company money, so I don't want to take this risk on this startup company that might not make it. You know, so I'm not going to try to put them with like my top card. You know, I don't know if that's what it's like. But.
Well, one of the things that, the two things that I think made them good and what came out in the case study was a lot of the other VCs would look at their weaknesses and they would look solely on their strengths because they said this might be the next Amazon, next Google. All these other companies had weaknesses, but they chose people who helped invest into those big companies at one time look at their strengths, not at their weaknesses, and therefore now look at those. Anybody who invested in the primary stages of those companies are billionaires. So I think they were very optimistic. And then second, they had that survey, and I liked the response was like 70% of the people that they handed out their survey responded, and it was always positive that their experience with working with them, regardless of they got accepted or not, they still thought it was a positive experience working with this VC instead of another company, because at least they were getting backed and they were very decisive, they were fast, they were willing to help them out, even if they did not get the money. Okay, so, all right, so we've jumped all over here, so I hope.
Well, guys, I hate to interrupt, but I got to get going, but I appreciate the discussion and the insights and everything. Sorry, I got to go. Our conflict scheduled and everything. We're kind of a mess this time, so hopefully we get it figured out for the following week.
Okay.
No problem. Take it easy.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like we've pretty much picked a lot of these things. I'm just trying to look over it really quick.
So we basically just, you guys probably already answered this, but this is more for the class, but they basically just talk a half hour about each class, or like run through questions, obviously, or we go a half hour on each case.
He said an hour, but like next week it's only one case. So would that mean it's only a half an hour? I'm not quite sure. So we're just experimenting. Like I said, if we can if we're decisive, we get the answers done, it can take 45 minutes, it can take a half an hour, it can take 15 minutes. It's just, I think we just need to make sure that we're thorough in our explanations and we come to a consensus on.
Sweet.
All right. Okay. The source, we've talked about that. How will we change if 16Z begins to fire CEOs because they are not performing well? How will this change? Okay, hold on. VC firms compete on their ability to source, pick, and win. How does A16Z business model influence these abilities compared to other VC firms? In bullet point 2, it says, how will this change if a 16Z begins to fire CEOs because they're not performing well? Will this increase, decrease, or have no effect on the number of potential deals 16Z sees compared to the competition?
I feel like we kind of talked about that, just talking about the way they do that and how they pick their people. If they're starting to fire CEOs based on like their own, or like if they see the CEO is not performing well, if they make that decision, if they're that kind of company that has that good culture and they make that decision to fire a CEO, I would have to believe it's going to only benefit their company, and they're going to try to replace them with somebody who will fit into the culture and will fulfill like their vision,
Right. So I just want to make sure we're talking about the CEOs of the other the companies that they're investing in, or they're firing this like Horowitz and Andreessen.
No, I think it's talking about the companies that they're investing with.
Okay, I thought so because it was like, why? That doesn't make sense. Okay, yeah, I mean, will this increase, decrease, or have no effect? I think what you were saying, it should increase because they're looking for good people to do so.
Right. Their money's involved now, so they're going to try to push that culture into these other companies, and so they're going to look for people who can make those decisions. And like I said, if they're going to fire someone, it's because of a good reason. Probably, I don't think that they're just carefree about it.
So here's a question: how do you think? I think we've already talked about it, but minus the good culture they have within, how do you think 16Z is supposedly going to succeed in this difficult environment? You know, when we have those top 5, the big dogs, how do you think they're going to survive having a scrap at some of the food?
I think it kind of goes back to there's a section on the operational team, and like they really made sure that the people that they were going in with knew what they were doing. Like they didn't want to just go in blindly type thing. Essentially, what I'm saying is they did their research, they did their homework. Like they looked into, you know, is this company going to be successful? You know,
so
you obviously you need a very successful company if it's going to be small.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of potential if you're going to, like you said, stand a chance against the big dogs.
So in all essence, every company has to start small somewhere, right?
Right.
And you're saying that if you have done everything right, your due diligence, doing the proper hiring of people, and making sure you got a good business model, you should be able to withstand the giants that come before you. Is that about right? Because
I feel like if you have a vision and you saw the opportunity in the market, right, and you got your niche, you like the reason you went into the market and the reason you decided to go into business, if it's a good one, if it's true, and then you stick to your vision and you're consistently trying to adapt to make yourself better, because it's ever changing world, right? But you're always adapting, but you're still holding true to that market that you found. Yes, you will withstand against the giants because you found that niche that they weren't fulfilling, right?
Right. So I think what's going on here is that, okay, we've already talked, you know, just adding on to another question is like they basically they have set themselves to secure from the inside out, not from the outside in, meaning they knew what kind of team, they knew the model they were going after, and then they knew and the business to which they go into. So then that will lead into the last question is, all right, you must decide whether or not to seek to double your assets under management. What do you guys think?
That's a hard one, and honestly, I think that I can't remember. Let me open up my sheet. I think I wrote on it. Yeah, I don't know. And because then the following question is, if you support rapid expansion, would you diversify in other sectors or geographies? I don't know. If they're going to double, I feel like they don't have to double necessarily people in order to double their assets, if that makes sense.
I would agree.
I don't think that they have to increase their payroll in order to increase their revenue generation or their revenue stream. So I don't know. I'm a supply chain dude, so I think that it's always cheaper. I mean, we can literally look at the fact, always cheaper operation, like inefficiency. I mean, or operation costs in-house compared to generating more revenue. And in the same theory, I feel like it's easier for them to be more efficient in-house and take on more than to add more people onto their payroll. So I think they could still double their assets without necessarily doubling their management team.
I agree with that. I mean, when I initially heard the, double your assets, I was thinking, double the team members essentially. And I was like, but no, I see what you're saying, Austin. I agree.
However, though, so it goes right back to, should they, in doubling your assets, that means they might have to go outside of their geography and also their realm of knowledge, such as they know tech, but what about, they're talking about high tech. They're not talking about clean tech, biotech. They said all that they're not very familiar with. And also they're talking about China and New York. This puts a hindrance on their decision.
Right.
So do you think they can still double their assets given that staying in this niche market of the high tech, or do you think they've not necessarily saturated it, but they're coming to their capacity, and now they have to venture out into new things?
Yeah, I'm going to be super frank. I think this is a stupid question. I think that when it asks if you support, first it says if you support rapid expansion. What the heck does that? I mean, what do you mean if I support rapid expansion? I feel like if your company is expanding, then let it expand at its rate. Like, what do you mean if I don't support rapid expansion, so we're not gonna expand because I don't support this? It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding. And then it says, would you diversify into other sectors? That also, it's like, why would you ever have an opinion or a bias on something that would impede you? I'm pretty savvy in the automotive industry, and I feel like everyone has their biased opinion about, like, let's say trucks. So if you're a Chevy guy, you hate Dodge trucks. If you're a Dodge guy, you hate Ford. You know what I mean? I think the only thing that a biased opinion does in these situations is because they won't open their mind to what's out there. They'll only stick. I think that if these guys were truly who they say they are and what we've read about, they are forming the culture from within. They found their niche. They're good. They're just like working with what they've got. If they saw an opportunity in other sectors or to have rapid expansion or somewhere else, I know that they would do it. And they would do it well. It would make sense to them. They know that they don't have anything to do with if numbers made sense and they've calculated, then yeah. And I hope I'm not making it confusing, but I think they would see that there was a market for somewhere else, you know what I mean, in another sector, or they would perform those same core principles, which is the culture that can be applied to any type of market. It doesn't mean just tech, you know what I mean? Does that make sense at all, or am I just
No? If I hear you right, it sounds like don't let fear, as Babe Ruth once said, don't let fear batting out stop you from coming to the plate. So in that sense, you guys there?
Hello?
My internet froze for a second.
Okay, I can hear you, Tanner. That's good. Well, at least all right. So what I'm trying to say is, I think what you're saying there, Austin, is that.
Can you hear?
What?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Okay, Tanner, you're back.
Sorry, it's like super laggy. I don't.
Yeah. Again, another reason why I don't like these online. All right, you guys there?
Yeah, well, that was so weird. Did it just like cut off halfway through my rant, or was it like?
No, I heard everything.
Oh, it must have froze perfectly. What?
I lost you about halfway.
Oh, yeah, I didn't like right when I was done because like right after I stopped, everyone's pictures just froze. I was like, dude, I just overloaded the camera. That was too much.
So what I'm trying to say is don't limit yourself based off unknowns. If you're expanding and you're smart as what you say you are, it will come. Don't stop yourself because of fear. And is that about right?
Yeah, and not to continue, but just like one small thing. I guess the best way to put it is like we read in the scriptures, but if we can take control of the small and simple things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we will have glory in the larger things as well. And I think that like that's it. Like they are doing well in their own thing. And like, yeah, we have all these crazy stories where it's like, yeah, they were good at this, but then they tried this and they failed. Okay, great. But I think that truly, if they're like working on something, they would have the means, especially with their sourcing abilities, to be able to like be professional also in other markets or other geographies, you know.
So
And I guess it's just one side of the argument for sure.
So you're agreeing that they should double their assets?
Why not? Why wouldn't you?
Hey, hit while the iron is hot. I mean, you bring up when you were talking, it made me do a lot of thinking because I was on the opposite. I'm one of those people. Sometimes, you know, they've only been in there for 4 years. They don't have a huge track record. To go into this is now you're starting to play with a market that might not be so graceful to them. But given what you said, that hey, they do have an ability to get good people, and when you have that, let people do the work instead of being a problem of Anderson, Andreessen, and Horowitz. And I keep on thinking, you know, that's the mindset I have as an owner, is that I would have to do all this. But if you have the right people, there's nothing to say you can't double your assets.
And why wouldn't you start? Obviously, if you know, to think, are you going to double your assets tomorrow? No. Like, why couldn't they start small? And then they find out it fails or they suck at it, they're huge. It's like it's going to be a small cost, but why not try it? You know what I mean? As a small business owner, I mean, if you had an opportunity to own like a McDonald's or something, it's not like you have to own 12 of them. You could try one, see if it makes you $1 million a year. Statistically, that's what they show. You know what I mean? It's like, sure, why not try it if you have the funding?
If I had an opportunity, I would buy a McDonald's, by the way.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So you're saying this right now. You have nothing to do with that right now. You have no expertise in that, but yet you're saying this. And so it's like, why wouldn't they try a little bit, you know, in these other areas and be like, all right, we're good at this, we're not good at this, you know, and eventually in 2 years or whatever, they could double their assets, but, you know, slowly but surely, and just take it, you know, just be smart about it.
I guess it never talks about the time frame. So just coming to consensus, we're going to try to wrap this up because we're coming to about an hour time. So are we all on the same boat that they should double their asset?
I think so.
And I honestly am looking at just one side of it. I am super open to other opinions because I love to learn all that stuff, but I just don't see why you would make the decision like, no, we don't want to double our assets. No, we don't want the ability to make more money. And it's probably just because I'm ignorant. Like I just don't understand why you wouldn't, unless, like I said before, they saw the market and was like, okay, this would not be profitable for us. It's like, okay, perfect. Then why are we asking this question? So, you know,
I guess some people like to be complacent, and maybe that's the whole thing, given the fact that people are not growing. Like, let me just tell you from where I'm coming at.
Yeah.
In the nursery industry, there are no nurseries growing right now. That recession put most of us nurseries anywhere from 30 to 50% down. People took almost 5-6 years to recover from that.
Wow.
It took out, I don't know how many nurseries, but it took out a lot. And there's like, we are one of the very few nurseries that are actually expanding, because first off, we can't get labor. There's this and this and this. So fear sets in. And that's, I think, a lot of the reasons why we choose not to expand. And what you're saying is you don't have to do it tomorrow,
Right.
in a year or two. It doesn't say when you need to expand, but I think the thing is you need to.
And it doesn't have to be big increments either.
That's true.
It can be one different, marketing revenue. That's, one form of growing your assets. And then from there, just other small steps.
Okay. So I think we're all on a consensus there on that. So I think we're all, so we're closing up on all that. There's one more thing. There's another assignment we have to do as a group. Let me just quickly go over it. So we're all, whoops, wrong one. Where am I? This is, we have to write a Word document. And, all right. Group assignment. All right. Write a convincing response to the following question. What should Stephen Carpenter have done differently that might have led to successful venture? Give specific actions and expected result. General thoughts will not be sufficient. Okay, we've been able to do that. Okay, should a 16Z seek to double its asset under the management over the next 2 years? If you support rapid expansion, would you diversify in other sectors such as life science, clean tech, and geographies, China and New York? And as a group, compose your response in a Word document and submit the write-up to your instructor. All right. I'm going to go ahead. Actually, hold on. Let me just do something. I'm going to go off. I think we're done recording.